What is up, night crawlers? Thank you for being here, and welcome back to the Nightmare's Edge. Now, I've got to be honest, tonight's story was a little rough for me, but it's an amazing story nonetheless. But be prepared. But without any further ado, please sit back, relax, and let me tickle those inner fears. Warning: this story contains descriptions of sexual assault and homicide. Viewer discretion is advised. Greetings. Welcome to the Sweet Mercy web auction. I hope everyone is having a wonderful night or day, depending on your time zone. Thank you for joining us. Please do not be alarmed by our costumes. It's important to conceal our identities in order to continue helping good people like yourselves. Here at Sweet Mercy, we know you've been through hell, and I won't waste your time by beating around the bush. Our product is killers. Our goal is to provide a semblance of closure to families who have suffered the ultimate tragedy. When a murderer is released on a technicality or police drop the ball, that's where we come in. Our investigators confirm the accused is guilty. Our extraction team transports them to one of our secure facilities. We eliminate the risk of unanswered questions by ensuring full, legitimate confessions are made beforehand. But don't take my word for it. The complete series of interrogations is available for download at no cost to our special guests. They make fantastic therapy aids. Now, let me give you a quick rundown on the site navigation. Obviously, our main video feed is in the center. The row of blue boxes beneath you are guests. And the green row above it features an equal number of our returning benefactors. On the right-hand side of your screen is where the bidding history will appear. And on the left, you'll see tonight's product along with his background information. He can see and hear us too. We find many guests wish to confront them directly. We understand most of you are unable to afford the auction, but we believe the victim's family have a right to be here. Not only will each of you have free access to the winning benefactor's live feed Saturday night, one lucky family will even be allowed to participate. That got you sitting a little straighter. You will each have a chance to tell us your story, and at the end there will be a short break while the benefactors choose who they wish to sponsor. If your benefactor has the highest bid, you get to visit our operation in person. Pun absolutely intended. Tonight, we have 34-year-old Carl Anthony Bateman. He was born in Boston, had an abusive childhood until leaving home at 17, and has been a burden on society ever since. Between June and December of 2019, he brutally attacked 4 women. Tonight, 2 of those 4 women have families here to confront their killer. Our third guest actually survived her terrifying ordeal. Bateman's first victim was Julie Edwards. She had just finished her sophomore year of college. Benefactors, let's hear what her parents have to say. Helen, Lawrence, you may begin when ready.
Hello. I won't pretend to understand any of this dark web mumbo. It took us 4 hours just to get this weird browser working. Last month, if someone had told me I'd be sitting on this thing, bawling my story out to people wearing tribal masks, well, shit. Just listen to that sentence. But it's worth every second to see that sorry sumbitch get his. Looks like he's had a rough go of it. And we thank you for that. We thought your invitation was a scam. It sounds like a plot twist to some twisted movie, but I wouldn't know how to tell one way or another. It certainly looked real, and right now maybe that's enough, so long as you aren't asking for money. I don't think Helen is up to saying very much, but I can speak for the both of us when it comes to seeing that bastard pay. I'm glad he's watching. Do you have anything to say, Bateman? No? I didn't think so. Hell, I wanted you taken alive so I could say something to you in court. But this is even better. Late at night, when we wish we had died, with our baby? Your suffering is what will lull us to sleep, and I'd love to be the one making you pay. We're from Tennessee. Julie was in Boston for college. We wanted her to come home for the summer, but she wanted to work and rent an apartment with one of her friends. Her roommate, Aaron, was with her for part of that last night. June 14th, 2019 was a Friday. They'd gone to some bar with a few other girls. Apparently they went there pretty often. Their Instagram things were full of the place. As the night went on, Julie's so-called friends left with various boys, and no one felt the need to make sure my daughter got home safely. I suppose that's where this shitbag saw her.
I'm sorry to interrupt, sir, but according to our interrogations, you were misinformed on that detail. By Mr. Bateman's own admission, he first saw Miss Julie leaving campus 2 weeks prior to the night in question.
Guess I shouldn't be surprised. Those detectives certainly weren't right about much. They couldn't even collect the goddamn evidence without contaminating our only chance of finding the bastard. I imagine we've been told plenty of easy answers. Why should police work for the truth when it's usually the same story anyway? They don't care what really happened. They only care what time they go home at night. I'm sorry if that ruffles any feathers. I know there's good ones out there. But none of them were working Julie's case. That much is certain. It was past midnight when cameras showed Jules leaving the bar. She preferred walking. Her apartment was only a few blocks away, though I suppose that part don't matter if you already knew where she lived. The police said there was no forced entry. Do you know how he got inside, sir?
He was able to make a copy of her key. Bateman entered the apartment shortly after their departure and hid in the coat closet. It was his third time doing so, but Ms. Edwards wasn't alone when she returned on the previous occasions. Once everyone was asleep, he was able to leave undetected.
Sick piece of shit. How can you be sure he was telling the truth?
Oh, he started with plenty of lies. They all do. Most information gathered during the torture is false, but we've perfected our technique. While yes, our guests enjoy seeing them suffer, it also breaks their spirits so they're easier to manipulate when the real interrogations begin. We spare no expense to create a believable environment for the product to think. Well, I'm not allowed to say that part. You've probably seen a version of Truth Serum on TV, but real life is a little different. Very specific conditions must be met for reliable results. We have a wonderful team of psychologists and physicians who explain it much more elegantly in the full video. And at the end, they present you with a full, factual report. I assure you, Mr. Edwards, I would never repeat anything that was less than 100% certain.
I think I understood most of that. So far, you've been more reliable than the police anyway. I'm sure we'll be watching that video as soon as this is over. But as for what happened next, I don't know if I can. Julie was just such a sweet girl. Why her? Huh? Bastard? Why her? The autopsy report paints a detailed picture, but I'm starting to realize I didn't know as much as I thought. I'm not sure if I can handle more, but I owe it to my baby to listen. She didn't deserve this, and she sure as shit didn't deserve to die alone. I want everyone to know what this pile of human waste did to get his rocks off. If it were up to me, I'd make him feel exactly what his victims felt, step by step, stopping just before it killed him so I could do it over and over. Yeah, I like the sound of that. It wasn't enough. You blindsided her and tied her up. No, you had to go the extra mile. She wasn't going to wear that costume voluntarily, certainly not for you. We were eventually told she was dressed like a character from a kid's show called Sailor Moon. For some reason, I felt compelled to look it up, and it left me even more confused. Apparently, it's common to sexualize cartoon characters. What the hell is wrong with people? I saw something titled SpongeBob Squirt Pants. I don't care what consenting adults do to get their jollies, but you can't tell me kids don't see that stuff. He strangled her when it was over. The bonds on her wrists and ankles tore her skin as she struggled to... I'm sorry, I can't. Can you, since you know more than us anyway, can you please just tell us what really happened that night?
Yes, sir, I can. Minutes after she returned home, a call from Aaron was placed on speaker while Julie stood only a few feet from the coat closet where Bateman was hiding. He would have figured it out anyway, but their conversation confirmed your daughter would be alone for the night. Approximately 30 minutes later, the strip of light beneath the door went dark, and Bateman waited a few minutes longer before quietly emerging from the closet. The apartment was dark except for a soft yellow glow at the end of the hallway, and music could be heard playing over the sound of running water. Julie didn't hear the bathroom door open, and she didn't see the shadow growing on the shower curtain. She only noticed Bateman's presence when the curtain was violently ripped away. He left her no chance to react. As she opened her mouth to scream, he stepped forward, punching her across the jaw. Her head snapped backwards, impacting the tiles as she fell and leaving her unconscious. Bateman moved her to the bed before quickly dressing her as Sailor Moon, before binding her hands and feet. The costume was purchased specifically for this occasion, and he took the time to style Julie's long blonde hair in the character's likeness. She regained consciousness before his work was done, but she was unable to move due to the restraints. He ignored her cries until finished. Then, he gave her the same two options he would later present to his future victims: play along and live, or try and escape and die. Julie was unfamiliar with Sailor Moon, but seeing as it was her only chance of survival, she chose to play along. In the first scene, Bateman chose the role of Prince Demondo for himself as...
Wait, I don't know if we can hear that part right now. We can't. After that, the autopsy listed her cause of death as asphyxiation. Is that accurate? Did he force her to live through all of those horrible things only to choke her in the end?
Yes, I'm afraid so. Ms. Edwards was subjected to various role-playing scenarios for several hours before being strangled during the final act.
I want to make that monster bleed. Every single night, I dream of doing hideous, unspeakable things to him. And I'm disgusted by what he's turned me into. You people have already given us more than we dared hope for. I don't know what these other folks have been through, but even if we don't get to be there in person, what you've done for us is more than enough. From the bottom of our broken and battered hearts, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Edwards. We know it isn't easy to hear these things, especially from strangers, but you're among people who understand this pain all too well. Each and every member of our team has been affected in a similar way. We take this work very seriously, and our main goal is to provide some semblance of comfort during these difficult times. Whether you find peace in knowing this man will never hurt another soul, or simply in his harsh punishment, makes no difference. We all grieve differently and heal at our own pace. Benefactors, are you ready to hear from our second guest? After committing his first murder, Bateman was overcome with paranoia, but when no detectives appeared at his door over the following weeks, that paranoia slowly turned into confidence. Then, on October 2nd, 2019, he decided to do it again. This time, his victim was 19-year-old Natalie Laird. Tonight, her father and 2 brothers are here with us. Mr. Laird, you may begin when ready.
Dad? Hey everyone, I'm Jason. This is my brother Tony. I don't think Dad is as ready as he thought. Is it alright if I ask a question instead? Thanks. I want to believe this is real, but how do we know that's a live feed on Bateman? Or that you guys even have him? He hasn't reacted to anything that's been said. I want to see him hold up 4 fingers without any camera glitches. Well?
Mr. Bateman, we warned you about this. This young man is speaking to you. Have it your way. Frank, 1 second contact, please. My apologies, Mr. Laird. Carl's microphone is muted, but the person you see entering our room is head of our security, and the device in his hand is a cattle prod. I'm sure Mr. Bateman will be more amiable to your request momentarily. Ah, yes, 4 fingers. Is that satisfactory, or would you like him to sit up and look at the camera? Please, don't hesitate to ask. We understand your skepticism completely, and we're happy to oblige any reasonable request to put your mind at ease.
No, sir. I think that does it. Thank you. So, you're saying if we talk about what happened to Nat, one of those rich people might decide to bid on our behalf? Yeah, I think I can see what you're doing. But everything else aside, our concern is knowing he can't hurt anyone else. Beyond that, he deserves whatever he gets. Natalie was a private person, though she wouldn't want everyone knowing what that bastard put her through. I know the details are all on the download anyway, but we haven't decided if we're going to watch it, or which parts we'll watch if we do. We would appreciate it if you didn't recount Nat's final moments here as well. I'll live with what I saw for the rest of my life, and despite how they feel right now, I don't want my father or brother to be plagued by the same images.
Absolutely, sir. That is entirely at your discretion, though you must never blame yourselves for the actions of a monster. You're a very bright, well-spoken young man, and I'm sure you have great things ahead. Thank you for your time. With reports of a second murder, warnings of the cosplay killer flooded local news networks, but his identity remained a mystery. Then, on the morning of November 4th, Vanessa Jordan's body was discovered by her boyfriend after failing to appear for a breakfast date. Andrew spoke to CNN saying he wasn't yet aware of the recent killings and struggled to process every aspect of the grueling scene. Though he did not recognize the popular Pokemon character Misty, I'm sure it's a likeness he won't soon forget. His chilling call to 911 is included in our final report. Benefactors, since there is no one here to speak on Vanessa's behalf, we will move on to our third and final guest. She is the only survivor of Mr. Bateman's madness. Please welcome Michelle Perkins.
Hey, you can call me Shelley. I didn't think this would be real either, but there he is. That's a face I'll never forget, even without the red jumpsuit. Look at me, bastard! No, don't glance and turn away. I want you looking right at me for every word of this. I said look at me.
Frank, 2-second contact, please. Excellent. Mr. Bateman, next time it will be 3 seconds. My apologies, Ms. Perkins. Please, continue.
Oh, I don't mind a bit. Feel free to zap him anytime he looks away. If you people want a story in exchange for a chance to do it myself, fine by me. I'm glad the Liards don't want to go. And I'm sorry to Mr. Edwards, but nobody deserves this more than I do. The first time I saw Bateman was when he appeared outside of my sociology class. He got way too close just to compliment my shirt. I suppose the fact it had an Inuyasha shirt on it is relevant. That's another anime, cartoon like Sailor Moon or Pokemon. He said he noticed it before class, like it was normal to wait around for an hour just to compliment a stranger's shirt. I tried to say thanks and walk away, but he followed me. I didn't want him to know which dorm was mine, so I walked to a coffee shop. Thankfully, a few friends from drama club were there. But when I tried to point out my stalker, he was gone. 30 minutes later, we left as a group, and there was still no sign of the psycho. That was a Tuesday. By Friday, I forgot he existed entirely. Midterms were over, and everyone was ready to go home for Christmas break. They were all on edge because of the cosplay killer. If he had have been attacking blondes or looking for a certain type, everyone would have dyed their hair and lived their lives. But no one knew who he would choose next. Julie was blonde like Sailor Moon. Natalie's hair was pink like Sakura's. And Vanessa was a ginger like Misty. Apparently mine is black like Kagomi's. Isn't that right, Carl? Oh, Kagomi is one of the main characters from the Inuyasha cartoon. I'll try to keep those parts simple, even if it kills me to call it a cartoon. This isn't the time for an anime lesson. Anyway, I stayed in that night. Pretending to live alone was nice, and my dorm felt like a safe place. Most people didn't even lock their door, but I always did. I was up late watching YouTube when there was a soft knock at the door. It wasn't uncommon. Plenty of others were staying through the holiday. And college kids aren't known for their love of grocery shopping. I thought one of the stoners was looking for snacks again. The moment I saw that creep's face, I knew I made a terrible mistake. I tried to slam the door, but he pushed back and it hit me hard enough to blur my vision. The struggle was brief. I only remember flashes, but it ended with him beating my head against the hard floor and everything going black. There were no dreams, only oblivion. When I did regain consciousness, it was like waking from a deep sleep until memories of the attack flooded back. My head ached like it was being split in half. As I became more aware, I could hear Bateman moving around, but I didn't want him to know I was awake. Still thinking we were in my dorm, I hoped to make a run for the door. I wish I looked around first. As I tried to rise, I noticed several things at once. We weren't in my dorm. We were in a dingy basement. I was also dressed like a slutty schoolgirl, which is the easiest way to describe Kagomi's costume. And around my ankle was a fuzzy handcuff attached to a metal bar anchored to the concrete floor. The chain was loud and he heard my movement immediately. He was wearing a red jumpsuit with a large beaded necklace like the Inuyasha character. I've had a hard life, but I'm a survivor. When I saw the sick look in his eyes and that disgusting grin, I made a decision to play along, no matter what. I had hoped my knowledge of the show would allow me to convince him the cuffs were unnecessary. But sadly, serial killers are harder to manipulate than it looks in the movies. But I didn't give up. Oh no, I played along for the worst 3 hours of my existence as he systematically ruined my life and my beloved childhood memory at the same time. It's no surprise this was the only way he could get a woman. He's infinitely more disgusting naked. Thankfully, his whopping 4 inches didn't do much tearing as he assaulted me. That made things much easier. Then it finally happened. If he wanted to act out one more of the biggest scenes of the series, he had to uncuff me. By then, he was in such a hurry to unlock it. He dropped the key twice in the process. By then, he was in such a hurry to unlock it. He dropped the key twice in the process. It took every ounce of my restraint not to run right then. He was watching me for any sign of defiance, and I knew I would die before I let him get that cuff on me again. Another part of my soul withered as I swallowed my vomit and forced myself to play along for a few more minutes. We were standing with my back against the wall, and within arm's reach, the liquor bottle was still right there where I set it. I bit my lip until it bled to keep from gagging as I waited for him to get lost in the moment. And I ran my fingers through his nasty, oily hair to position my hand as closely to the shelf as possible. As his eyes began to roll back, I grabbed the bottle and brought it down on his head with all my strength. It didn't break, and he didn't fall to the floor like I imagined. He only groaned and staggered a few steps back as he looked at me with the blackest hatred I'd ever seen. I knew how quickly he would catch me if I ran. Instead, I charged at him like a bull and hit him over the head once more. The impact reverberated up my arm to my shoulder, but I hardly felt it. My sole focus was on Bateman. He was on the ground and bleeding, but whether he was really unconscious or faking it, I couldn't be sure. That's when I noticed how close he had fallen to the handcuffs. My heart was beating in my throat as I approached, but somehow I got the cuff on his wrist. He began groaning again as it clicked shut, and I ran from the room without looking back. I didn't notice or care that my only articles of clothing were a see-through blouse and a skimpy green skirt with nothing underneath. My only thought was finding an exit. Had I been thinking clearly, I would have bashed that psycho's brains until only a pile of mush was left. Unfortunately, that didn't occur to me until Bateman was already screaming to be released. By then, I'd reached the top of the basement stairs which led to a dark kitchen. I couldn't see anything. Using the wall as a guide, I began making my way through the strange house until my hand found an open doorway. At the end of the hall, 2 windows let in just enough light to identify the front door. My hands were still shaking as I pulled it open and threw myself on the threshold. Once outside, my hopes were crushed yet again by the sound of footsteps racing up the basement stairs. I shut the door softly as I heard his first infuriated scream. There was just enough starlight to see I was on an abandoned house's creaky porch. I had no clue where I was, and the few other houses also appeared empty. The only car on the street had to be the one Bateman drove, but it was locked. I kept moving further away. I wanted to melt into the darkness and become one with the night. There was less than 50 yards between me and the murder house when a spotlight shined a few feet to my left. I dropped to my stomach and managed to roll behind a tree just as the beam passed by. But he wasn't giving up. Bateman's voice was dripping with malice as he alternated between threatening me with vile, disgusting things or promising to take me home. Any tenuous grip that man had on reality was long gone. He waved the light around in random, jerky motions, leaving me no time to move or check his position without the risk of being seen. I focused on looking for the best direction to run. That's when I noticed space for a culvert that had been dug alongside the road. It was nothing but an overgrown ditch now, but I laid flat and crawled through the tall grass. It was my only chance. When the light passed back the other way, I didn't hesitate. I didn't know what lay at the end of the long, abandoned road, but there was no turning back. In the ditch, I felt like everything had to be okay. I'd come too far to die. Daydreams of returning to that house with police kept me going as my body burned from the itch of 1,000 bug bites in places that already hurt too much to think about. It felt like hours later when I realized the light was gone. But I was still too afraid to leave the ditch. Even at the end when there was nowhere else to crawl, I stayed in place to examine my surroundings. In front of me was a real road with painted lines, and a single light shone in the distance to my left. That's where I headed. Once out of view from that street, I felt safe enough to stand. 2 cars passed by before I made it to those distant lights. I should have flagged them down for help, but I hid from both, convinced it was Bateman. When I finally did make it to the light source, I cried tears of joy to see it was a normal house, and several more were further down the street. Unfortunately, I looked more frightening than the actual psycho. The first house wouldn't even open the door. The next 2 slammed them in my face. And finally, the fourth was kind enough to listen to me through a closed window. She was a little old lady. I can't blame her for being suspicious. But eventually, we were able to come to an agreement. She called 911 while I made myself as small as possible in a dark corner of her porch. Once help was on the way, she felt safe enough to let me inside. It took almost 40 minutes for help to arrive, but when it did, I made sure the police understood exactly which house I escaped from. In my terror, I imagined Bateman was still out there looking for me, but he was gone. I met with a sketch artist, and finally, a week later, they found Bateman. He had no criminal record, but there was no doubt about his guilt. The bastard admitted to it immediately before requesting a lawyer, and you guys know the rest.
Yes, Mr. Bateman would have spent the remainder of his life in a comfortable institution had he not escaped. Clearly, the state of Massachusetts could not be trusted with his care. Unfortunately, they now believe he's dead. Ms. Perkins, thank you for sharing your story with us. I know you're all ready for the main event, so without any further delay, please enjoy this short video while the benefactors make their final decisions. Alright, now that we have a break with our audience, let's see how they feel about tonight's guests. It's astounding how much more people will say when they think they're speaking to a small, intimate group. But that Laird boy might be a little too smart for us, eh? I like him. But it's a good thing you all are the ones actually deciding which guest will get their private meeting. Please turn your attention to the poll and cast your vote now. Who will have the taste of sweet revenge on Saturday? Will it be the grieving parents or the courageous heroine? I don't often choose favorites, but it's hard to when you have a firecracker like Shelley. While the votes are coming in, benefactors, are you ready to hold the auction? For those joining us for the first time, we'll replay the footage for the guest who will think it's happening live. This way, the audience always wins. And we're back. Thank you, guests, for your continued patience, and now, the moment you've all been waiting for. Mr. and Mrs. Edwards, benefactor number 3 is a parent like yourself. They would be honored to bid on your behalf. Laird family, benefactor number 1 saw a bit of their younger self in Jason. Since he has declined the prospect of seeing Mr. Bateman in person, you may potentially choose someone to go in your stead. And last but certainly not least, Ms. Perkins, it's no surprise that benefactor number 2, who once survived a similar attack, is overjoyed to be your sponsor. My only question is, are you ready to start the bidding? Going once, going twice, sold. For $3.5 million to benefactor number 2. Wow, what a roller coaster. Ms. Perkins, pack your bags because we'll be seeing you on Saturday. Well guys, that's it for tonight. But before we go, don't forget to download The Crimes of the Cosplay Killer for just $49.95. Or if you would like to pre-order The Punishment of the Cosplay Killer at the same time, you can add both to your Sweet Mercy collection for a mere $89.95. Those who reserve their copies today will also receive special behind-the-scene footage from Warehouse 66. Hello, Shelley. It's nice to finally meet you in person. So over the last few days, we discussed what you'd like to see happen here, and I think you'll be pleased with the work we've done. Considering we do this full-time, we already had most of the items you requested, but the gynecologist chair was a wonderful addition to our collection. We've named it Perkins. I think it's going to be a guest favorite. Oh, watch your step. One of the technicians hasn't finished putting this one together yet. You strap the subject arm to that piece, then you turn the lever to twist. Now that you've seen the theater, let's go get Bateman. I thought you'd like to see his new forever home. And don't worry about the other prisoners. They're here for the same reason, but they are completely harmless. Judging by our recent conversations, I assume you aren't squeamish.
Ah, no, you don't have to worry about... Holy shit, are his eyes gone? Whoa, there's so many of them.
You seem surprised. Most people have the same idea, that it's better to keep them alive. The only problem is, we can't tell the future. What if something happens and they get away? Then we would be responsible for letting these dangerous animals loose into society. That's why we remove their eyes and castrate them before they're even transported to Sweet Mercy Zoo. Even if they were to get out of their cells, they'd have no idea where to go next. Obviously, that doesn't include Carl. We didn't want to be presumptuous. You'll find him exactly as you saw him on the live stream, but we have surgeons standing by in case you need assistance or the subject gets a little too close to death.
That's brilliant. I can't wait to get started.
I love your enthusiasm. You should consider a career with us. We're always looking for people who truly understand the importance of our work, and the pay is marvelous. Just something to think about. Ah, here we are. Mr. Bateman, your date has arrived. Thank you all so much for watching. This is a Paige F. and Turner original. Thanks, Paige, for letting me narrate this. I want to give a big shout out to Dom's Roundtable, Lady Spookaria, and Big Daddy Stone for lending me those amazing voices of theirs. Today was Dom's debut as a voice actor. Big Daddy Stone, Lady Spookaria, the emotion that you guys put into this story. I know it was rough, but thank you so much for doing so. Be sure to check the description for the links to their YouTube channels, socials, and to the story. But until next time, remember, just because you didn't see it doesn't mean it wasn't watching you.